Recently, I picked up this motherboard on eBay. I wanted to put together a Windows 98 build using a Pentium 3. I assumed I could just plug in a regular ATX power supply here. A 20-pin connector does fit, however, I then saw there was a proprietary 6-pin connector here, so I went back on eBay and picked up this adapter. It's got the proprietary 6-pin thing. This plugs in just fine, and a 20-pin ATX power supply plugs in up here okay as well. So I figured if I plug both of these in with a regular power supply, it should work, right?
Isn't that cute? But it's wrong!
After a bit of digging, I discovered that this motherboard came out of a Dell Dimension 4100 desktop. Well, apparently Dell made this entire thing proprietary even though it's based on an existing Intel board. Upon some further reading, you see these connections here? Dell shifted the entire connector over 3 pins, and then routed these unused pins to that proprietary 6-pin connector instead. So in order for this to work, you can probably see here, these wires just go straight through. They're not shifted like the Dell connector is expecting. So if I plug this in like this here, it's going to take the standard pin layout for an ATX power supply and feed it to the wrong pins. Since they shifted this over, I need to take this apart and make it match what Dell is expecting. Hoping I didn't already fry this motherboard. There's a good chance I did, but we're already in this deep. I may as well try taking this apart and see if I can make it work the way it's supposed to. So let's find out. My wife graciously let me borrow 2 of these pins because I don't have one of those tools that lets you take these apart. I need to get these pins between the plastic and the metal so it pushes on the little wings that hold it in place. This took way more effort than I was expecting. Okay, now I just gotta do it, 19 more times? It was during this attempt that I realized I was bleeding. However, it appears that my blood sacrifice worked. Eventually, I did get them all out and bandaged up my thumb here. However, some of the wires ended up snapping off, leaving the metal connector inside of here. So now I gotta try to figure out how to get those out of there.
One eternity later.
These needle nose pliers were just small enough to get in there and yank these out. So now all I gotta do is solder them back in place and put together the adapter, hopefully in a cool montage because this took way too long. It actually works! The auction also included a video card. I'm assuming it's a TNT2, but I guess we'll find out. I found the dustiest monitor I could. And we have picture. Look at that beautiful Dell logo. Pentium 3, 866, 128 megs of RAM, and you can see right there, Dell Dimension 4100. Well, now we need to find a hard drive. We could use one of these old spinning discs from the Triassic period, or we could use something a little more modern. I picked up this adapter on eBay, and it should allow me to plug an SSD directly into the IDE port on the motherboard. This motherboard does only have an ATA66 interface, but we should be able to max that out.
Okay.
Now we just need our optical drive and a perfectly legit copy of Windows 98, or as I like to say, Windows 90 Great. There's nothing too remarkable about this install. The footage is sped up quite a bit. Maybe these speed lines will make it more exciting. It did at one point get stuck at 100% for quite some time, and it turns out that for whatever reason it wanted a floppy drive connected, so I did plug one of those in and start it over. I cut that part out, but that was something I wasn't expecting. And eventually, here we are, Windows 98 2nd Edition. Just look at those crunchy icons and that seafoam green background. Beautiful. Now we just need to get the drivers installed and we should be good to go. Luckily, Dell still has most of these available on their website, so I was able to just download these and copy these directly over to the SSD. I also downloaded this auto patcher for Windows 98, which should get this updated with all the latest patches. I went ahead and told it to just go ahead and install everything. It took about 18 minutes to finish, but it was basically fully unattended. Also, how did those games get on here? It's a mystery. Alright, it's time to run some benchmarks and see what this computer can actually do. I'm not expecting too much from a TNT2, but I mean the processor's pretty good. I'm just going to use the default settings here and see how this goes. And it's not looking great. Like 12 FPS, maybe 20, 22 FPS. Man, this test has everything. RC Pro-Am, Game of Thrones, The Matrix, unsupported hardware, whatever this is, and Spin Horse. Let's check in with the computer to see how it's doing. That's about what I expected. And we crossed the finish line with 800 3D marks. Which I'm assuming is not great considering most of these tests were either unsupported hardware or, below 10 FPS. I did try running some games on here. You can see here I've got Half-Life, and I also tried Unreal Tournament and Return to Castle Wolfenstein. The games did run. I think Unreal Tournament actually didn't do too bad, but I mean, Return to Castle Wolfenstein really could only run at the lowest possible settings to really get a playable frame rate. So I think next time we're going to have to see about some upgrades. But with that, I think we're going to have to call it a day. I appreciate you sticking around to the end of the video and hope to see you next time.